While I was playing League of Enthusiastic Losers, the same word kept coming across my mind over and over during my hour of gameplay. Charming. And I happened to need that charm when I played it last week. I spent a long time getting my Nintendo Switch hooked up to my PC with an Elgato capture card because that's what I bought the game on. Okay, fine. It was really only 5 or 10 minutes, but it felt like forever because I was in cranky gen mode to begin with. I swear to God, my capture card wanted to be my villain origin story or something. I almost gave up a few times and considered just buying the game a second time on Steam or something. But my mother didn't raise a quitter, so I prevailed and managed to avoid a total meltdown. But my Switch is now stuck there, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, I say all this because the game calmed me down. It helped me forget my frustrations, and it made the software updates and mess of cables and connections worth it. Hey, I'm Jen, and welcome to In One Sitting, the series that explores games that can be completed in 5 hours or less. League of Enthusiastic Losers is a point-and-click about a group of lovable underachievers doing their best while trying to figure things out. It focuses mostly on two adult men, Volodya and Vitya, as they navigate life in 1990s Russia. So let's follow in their footsteps and find some meaning in this game. Despite the game's title, League of Enthusiastic Losers is actually not about losing at all. Instead, it's actually about redefining what winning even means. The game rejects the stressful productivity culture that is so prevalent by encouraging slowing down and making your own version of success. Let's be honest, winning is not about min-maxing your entire life and grinding side quests forever. No one wants to do that, not even me, and I've played thousands of hours of World of Warcraft for God's sake. Volodya and Vitya are instead calibrating their idea of success by using their willingness to adapt. For example, at one point near the end, a child asks them, "Is it okay we haven't found the treasure?" And Vitya does not skip a beat and says, "Of course that's okay, we had a nice stroll." That line tells you everything you need to know, and it definitely made Steve Jobs roll over in his grave. It tells you that the adventure was never about the treasure. It was about the process and the time spent together. They didn't find what they were looking for, but they still found value in putting in the effort. That's relatable as hell. I don't always find what I'm looking for at a store, but I almost always come back with something that I didn't need anyway, and sometimes it's better than what I wanted in the first place. We had a nice stroll is the game telling us that the goal was never the point. The point was learning how to shift the goalposts of success to something more realistic and doable. This game rebels against the world constantly asking us to be productive and accomplish things. I mean, honestly, how many times have you been recommended a YouTube video from some tech bro telling you to wake up at 4:30 a.m.? Do you ever really buy into the idea that it'll fix your life? Hell no. And Volodya and Vitya don't buy it either. Instead of believing in traditional metrics of success, League of Enthusiastic Losers celebrates effort, slowing down, being average over all else. It removes shame from not being exceptional. No one is trying to be the CEO of life, we're just trying to make it through Thursday. The game normalizes not knowing what you're doing, and even gives the green light to be awkward, even as an adult. It makes a point to say that none of this is tragic or something to be ashamed of. Instead, it's entirely human. League of Enthusiastic Losers' atmosphere and pacing are intertwined with one another. The colors and hand-drawn art makes the game incredibly approachable and warm. There are a lot of very whimsical things, including the spider that lives in their apartment. I don't like spiders being in my living spaces personally, but there is something so incredibly endearing about them naming their spider roommate Arkady. My only complaint is that the spider probably doesn't pay rent, and that's not cool, man. But fun fact, the name Arkady is often associated with peacefulness and simplicity, which is the cutest thing ever and very on brand for the game. That said, the spider is only one example of the game using its tone and humor to strengthen itself. Speaking of humor, League of Enthusiastic Losers is really funny at times. I found myself laughing out loud at many points, like when it's revealed that the neighbor's goat is named Demon because, and I quote, "his name is only as good as his behavior." That's almost as silly as naming your chihuahua Rampage, which actually might be accurate for a chihuahua. Those little guys are full of rage. Anyway, the game isn't just absurd and silly, it's also deadpan, tongue-in-cheek, and awkward. And I really relate to that type of humor. Granted, I have a broad sense of humor, but still. The dialogue isn't just funny, it's also unique and sweet, but not sickly so. It knows how to keep itself from going off the rails and doesn't over-explain. It lets everything sit and land naturally. That's something that is kinda hard to accomplish, and League of Enthusiastic Losers does it so well. I could personally take a page from the game's playbook, but hey, I'm working on it. All of that humor feeds directly into the pacing. Its dialogue carries a lack of urgency, accompanied by low stakes and intention. For example, Volodya and Vitya are given a week to come up with rent for their apartment. Technically, that's a deadline, but I never felt like there was a high-stakes element, and I mean that in the most positive way possible. Everything was building upon that deadline, but it didn't make me anxious or worried. Instead, I coasted along with the game to see where it went. Accomplishing that balance is rare, and the developers completely nailed it. Also, the game does not overstay its welcome. The pacing and playtime work perfectly for the story being told. There wasn't a single moment where I felt, man, this is going on for way too long. Every moment lasts exactly as long as it needs to. This slow and deliberate pacing never feels like it's in a hurry, and that's kind of the whole point. I generally prefer games that are a bit more engaging in some way, but this game still managed to keep me pulled in by weaponizing its charm and humor. It's a weapon in the form of a pillow attached to a broomstick, but a weapon nonetheless. It leaned heavily on its themes and story, and much less on the actual mechanics. In fact, League of Enthusiastic Losers has some of the simplest mechanics I've ever personally played with, and I'm someone who made an entire Notion page dedicated to making everyone in Stardew Valley love me. So that really tells you something. There are a handful of interactive activities in the game, like crafting a toy boat, fixing a toy airplane, and guiding a goat across a table with a sugar cube. The goat part was admittedly very strange, but I absolutely loved it. There wasn't a single point in the game where I thought, yeah, this game could really use a goat on a kitchen table right now, but I got that anyway, and I immediately accepted it like it was completely normal. The lack of mechanics actually supports the game's themes, but it's something that you should know about if you're considering playing it. You should also know that skill is not needed to play this game, nor is it the point. If killing Margit the Fell Omen in Elden Ring is your minimum requirement for a skill check, then maybe don't play this game. The simplicity serves its message well, but if you require a challenge or a fast pace, or need high-stakes drama, then League of Enthusiastic Losers probably isn't going to be for you. This is not going to get your heart racing unless you're terrified of cutesy hand-drawn spiders, which is totally fine, by the way. We all have our fears. That said, it's a great game for anyone who is kind of the opposite of that. This game is awkward, gentle, full of vibes more than anything. I think those elements definitely fit a lot of gamers who prefer cozier experiences, which is who I would recommend playing this game to. Do you light up a candle when you game, or is Animal Crossing part of your identity? My personal answer to those questions is yes, and I like this game a lot, so you might too. One of my minor criticisms of the game regards some of the environment's more subtle details. Specifically, there's Russian text scattered throughout the environment. It's a tiny detail, but a detail I wish I understood if just for the extra flavor. For all I know, the writing could have told me not to trust the goat. Though trusting the goat would be my fault anyway, considering its name is literally demon. Anyway, I really enjoyed the game the world puts you in, and I kinda just wanted more. The reality is that I likely didn't miss out on much, but it would have been nice to have had the option to care or not. It didn't let me be nosy, and my curiosity hated that. Now, it's possible this was intentional and was meant to make you feel like you're in a slightly foreign world, but it also could have just been a localization gap. You can make the argument that it should have been translated for accessibility, but you could also say that not translating it made the world building more accurate and immersive. But honestly, don't argue with yourself like I do, it doesn't get you anywhere. In addition to this minor criticism, there was something that confused me while I was playing: the protagonists' names. They are introduced as Volodya and Vitya, which I just assumed were their names. But at one moment in the game, Vitya corrects their landlord and says his name is Victor, and their hilarious older neighbor calls him Victor too. I was super confused, and I assumed it was a language thing, so I googled it once I finished playing. I legitimately thought my memory was failing me again, and I straight up gaslit myself. Wouldn't be the first time. But as it turns out, I was right. I learned that Vitya is an affectionate and informal nickname for someone named Victor. Volodya is something similar but for the name Vladimir. It makes a lot of sense now thanks to me actually looking into it. This confusion was something that resulted from me not knowing all that much about Russia or its nicknaming conventions, but that's totally on me. It is one of those things that gets lost in translation. It reminded me that the world is much bigger than my rental in California. So I think their names are actually Victor and Vladimir, but that's not concretely explained anywhere. At the same time though, the game shouldn't have to beat me over the head with lessons about Russia. I think it's just an unfortunate byproduct of translation and me lacking cultural context. My ignorance has been exposed, but I'll recover. It's fine. It's character development. I use an emotional damage rating scale for every game I play in this series. This scale shows you how much a game affected me emotionally but has no bearing on how it might affect you. League of Enthusiastic Losers earns a 5 out of 10.
Emotional damage!
It definitely hit me emotionally, just not enough for me to text a therapist that I haven't seen in months. The game is small and intimate, definitely cozy, but with some mildly bittersweet moments. It genuinely put me in a better mood than I was in before I played, and that counts for something. Its vibes were a complete contrast to a lot of the more epic, world-ending stakes of the games I often play. Heavier moments, such as Volodya's book not being accepted, or the landlord's wife being in the hospital, nudged the scale higher, but the game always found its way back to a balance. I found myself thinking about the game after I finished it. Real talk, I often feel guilty about not being more productive, but League of Enthusiastic Losers reminded me that it's okay to not be perfect. I think I'll remember this game the next time I spiral about productivity. And if nothing else, I'll probably think about the goat again. Win-win. Before I started this game last week, I was stupidly irritated and nearly tangled in cables. I was cursing loudly, and I think I was worrying my husband. But after I finished playing League of Enthusiastic Losers, I felt oddly comforted and calm. A group of fictional underachievers helped bring me back to an emotional baseline, and I'd consider that a success. The game argues that there's beauty in uncertainty, beauty in being a loser, and beauty in being anything other than extraordinary. The game's message is also just accurate. Most of our lives are not full of noteworthy, dramatic, or crazy moments. Instead, we're all shaped by a combination of small things, with larger moments sprinkled in. No one in League of Enthusiastic Losers is trying to be the best at anything. Instead, they're just trying to be okay, and that's reflective of real life. Life isn't always about finding treasure, sometimes it's about the walk, and that in itself is what is truly extraordinary. That's all for now. See you next time, and as always, thanks for sitting with me.
Вот встало солнце летнее, взяло меня с собой, и день меня повел через события.